Guys, it's Jacob from Stringbuzz here, stringbuzzworld.org being the music journalism site, links in the description down below. And we have a brand new song review for you today, and it's the latest track by Frank Ocean featuring Jay-Z and Tyler, the Creator. What a lineup, really. And that's Biking, so I'm going to refer to the original article as I usually do for these videos, so I hope you enjoy. So even though critics adored Blonde, I was a little impartial towards it, I guess, and saw the record had good sides and bad sides to it. But when it comes to the features on this track in particular, concentrating on this track, Jay-Z hasn't really impressed me over the last decade or so, but I can't help but love Tyler's music and his approach, and it's about time he released something different as well, because it's been far too long since his last release. So with that unusual collaborative lineup, I guess that's a bit of a mouthful to say. Shall we see what I thought of this brand new track? Well, I think the track is okay, and there are some outstanding moments scattered throughout its runtime, but I think Jay-Z sounded really out of place during the intro of this track, as I thought he would, and didn't really add very much into the track. And I didn't really like how monosyllabic Frank was throughout this track either. I get that that style is really big right now, especially in trap music, but going full-on Young Thug just felt a little unnecessary to me, because if I wanted to hear that, then I'd probably just listen to a Young Thug track. I think Tyler sounded great on this track though, as I thought he probably would, and although he wasn't on the track for very long, he did add a bit of flair and fire into the track, and it was a track that had been largely drifting up to that point, a little bit tame for me. So the song is fine, it just needed more to it, but I think this brought out the best in Tyler, as I think he's better as a collaborative feature than perhaps he is sometimes with his own records. Production wise, the track is actually quite spacious when it comes to panning, which in some ways is good, and in others I found a little bit tedious. Again, I think it allowed for the stereo field to feel much bigger, which I do enjoy, and it did feel more full as well. Each hole was covered very nicely, but when it came to the foreground in particular, I just felt it was a little empty at times, and I found that a little bit annoying because nothing really jumped out and grabbed me in. There is quite a bit of reverb put on this track, which again works in some sections, especially in the backing instrumentation, but in others it kind of made the diction of words in particular when it came to vocal tracks kind of disappear as everything sort of slooped together and just hung on for a little bit too long. The retro slash vintage clipping sound is quite popular at the moment, this sort of vinyl sounding record sound, but then again, it just felt unnecessary for me, because the track doesn't sound retro at all in its progressions, in its vibe, I guess is a word people like to use at the moment, in its atmosphere, so it just felt tagged on, and I don't know why they did that. It just made the production seem a little cheaper for me. The organic instrumentation was just that, it was organic, and I liked how natural this track felt, and I think, again, that is a popular in thing at the moment. People are going for more instrumentally based rap tracks. I mean, I think Kendrick Lamar is a good showcase of that. Even Tyler himself has done that very well in the past, with some great tracks on Cherry Bomb in particular, using organic instrumentation. All the vocal tracks sounded pretty good as well, other than that little sort of reverb mishap, as I mentioned, feeling relatively untampered with. But Jay-Z had this strange EQ on him, which made him stick out even more on this track and seem even more out of place, which he already was, so why sort of emphasize that? When it comes to the musicality of this track, it started off strong despite Jay-Z basically carrying that first part. I like the atypical progressions and this reverb heavy Rhodes keyboard that chucked a whole ton of character into the mix straight from the word go. I even think that Jay-Z's flow was actually fairly decent in this track. It just didn't match anything on the rest of the track, and it sounded so weird, his transition from him to Frank, as it just sounded like they were on completely different tracks from one another. It sounded disjointed to me. Frank immediately came in with that trap sounding flow, and he sounded fairly dull on this track actually. If you had taken away his name from this record, I think it could have just sounded like anybody else. I know he's used to this sort of monotonous melodic type rhythm, but for me, it just didn't work out this time around. The song did develop well though, and the use of dynamics and progression changes helped bolster those transitions, and for the most part I found the track fairly exciting, I guess. Tyler is the person to listen to on this track though, as his flow is top notch throughout, and his vocal tone and approach suits this style of track really well. Lyrically, the song is fine and full of fairly sparse experiences and some left field concepts as well, especially based around this whole biking idea, but there were no lines that really shocked me or knocked me over the head, like say the last Logic track did, or the Kendrick Lamar track, or even the Joey Badass and Schoolboy Q track, or any of those tracks really. Even some of Reggie Snow's last few tracks, it was a bit weak really, especially for, you know, the artists involved who are known for having fairly decent lyrics on their tracks. So all in all, the track is a little better than average, I guess, but I just didn't connect with it all too well. For a song that has so much momentum and development going in its favour, I'm surprised more wasn't done to really neat up the edges left between each feature. So I gave it a G rating of 5.5 out of 10, which is a little bit above average. So if you like this video, then please leave a like, subscribe to see more, and I'll see you around next time. Bye-bye.